Doing the right kind of revision is crucial. This video provides guidance on our recommended approach to revision at Berwick Academy. Effective independent study, or revision, can add up to 5 months of progress in every academic year. This is one of my favourite facts from the Education Endowment Foundation. But the key word here is effective. What is effective revision? The revision strategies that we recommend are informed by evidence about long-term memory and working memory, and they're all about making knowledge stick. Education researchers Clark, Kirsch, and Sweller describe long-term memory as that big mental warehouse of things, be they words, people, grand philosophical ideas, or skateboard tricks that we know. In the same article, they describe working memory as a limited mental space where we think. To be most effective, you need to ensure that knowledge is stored in your long-term memory, that big warehouse of knowledge that we can see on the left, so that your limited working memory capacity can be used to address the question being asked or the problem that you're being asked to solve. So using this evidence to guide us, what is effective revision? There are 4 key methods that we believe will help you most. Number 1, identifying and breaking down the most relevant knowledge, and your teachers can help you with this. Number 2, retrieving this knowledge through activities like pair and self-testing. Number 3, applying knowledge through activities like mind mapping and practice questions. And number 4, doing this at least 3 or 4 times over a period of time. And this is called spaced practice. We'll look at each of these approaches in more detail. But before I talk in more depth about those approaches, I want to talk about 2 approaches to revision that are not effective on their own, but are very popular with students. And these are rereading and highlighting. And as they're so popular, but also so ineffective, it's very important that we address this. The key phrase here is on their own. These methods do not work in isolation. Studies have shown that rereading and highlighting are very ineffective at transferring information to the long-term memory. If you spend time rereading and highlighting a text, and crucially do not do anything else with that information, your recall of the content of the text later on will be low. Both of these approaches have their place. For example, rereading a text for English literature may be important, rereading your notes in order to make flashcards to revise the information, but it's not enough simply to reread and highlight information on its own. So when and how should rereading and highlighting be used? They can often be the first step in the first strategy that I described, identifying and breaking down the most relevant knowledge. This can work well as a 3-step process. For example, number 1, rereading and highlighting the key points or facts that you want to learn. Number 2, breaking this information down further. For example, in history, this could be breaking it down into individual dates leading up to a key event. Or in design technology, it could be breaking it down into the steps of a design process. And finally, using that information to create resources to actively revise, for example, flashcards. Now, following this process transforms rereading from a passive process into an active one, and will give you resources that you can use to proactively learn the knowledge that you need. We will talk more about how to do this and how to practice application of knowledge in a moment. The second strategy, retrieval practice, links clearly into the first one. This is that active process of testing yourself being tested by someone else. We do this at the start of every lesson, but it's something that every student should also do independently as part of their revision. We know that low-stakes testing is a better way of remembering information than simply rereading key material, and research has shown that having knowledge stored in the long-term memory, that warehouse of memory, frees up the working memory, allowing you to think more effectively about the question that's actually being asked. There are 2 kinds of memory strength that we want to build through revision. These are storage strength, how well the information is stored in long-term memory, and retrieval strength, how easily we can access and recall the stored information. We need to revisit information regularly over an extended period of time to improve retrieval strength, and by that I mean how easily we can access the information that's stored in the long-term memory. So let's talk about some retrieval practice methods. Self and paired testing is the most important and effective method of retrieval practice that you can use. And these are all examples of self and paired testing. So you may wish to use flashcards with questions on one side and answers on the other. You may wish to close your book and create a mind map, a list, or a labelled diagram from memory. You may wish to use mini whiteboards in pairs to ask and answer questions. And answering knowledge-based questions from a revision guide or a workbook is another example. The key here is to remember that you are testing yourself or being tested by somebody else. The third strategy, applying knowledge, is also crucial. When we draw upon the knowledge in our long-term memory and we use it to plan an answer to an exam question or to actually complete a practice question or a paper, we're building the ability to apply knowledge in different contexts. Another way to think about this is that it helps to make knowledge flexible. Your knowledge base from lessons is strong and will become stronger through revision. To truly master this knowledge, you must practice applying it in different contexts over and over again. In this mind map on Macbeth, the student has not simply written down everything that they can remember about Macbeth, which would be a valid retrieval practice activity, but they have selected the knowledge that is relevant to the theme of guilt and created a structured plan for an essay on this topic. The next step would be for this student to complete the practice answer. And then another good step after that would be for them to plan an answer on a different theme of the play, taking that similar knowledge and deciding how to apply it in that different context. So applying knowledge is, in essence, planning exam answers and practicing answering exam questions. And this is an incredibly powerful technique and it can be transformational. So I'd really recommend doing this as much as possible. The final strategy I want to talk to you about of our 4 is spaced practice. Spaced practice is revisiting knowledge at least 3 or 4 times to make it stick. Studying at regular intervals and returning to the same topics over and over. But you will need to be the judge as well of how many times you need to revisit something. It may be that by the 3rd or 4th time you haven't quite got it. You've got some flashcards that you're not confident on and you may need to go over them again. Spaced practice is the opposite of massed practice, which you might know as cramming. Mass practice or cramming knowledge the night before or in the days before an exam does not work well. It doesn't allow for that transfer of knowledge to long-term memory. Remember that warehouse image. By contrast, spaced practice has a significant positive impact on long-term memory. Mass practice, trying to learn everything at once, has been shown to be ineffective in storing information in long-term memory. This is evidence-based as well. Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve shows us that we need to revisit information approximately 3 times to make it stick, and that may be different for different people, different topics, different situations. As you can see from the first curved line on the left, we forget knowledge quite quickly after the first time that we learn it. After the second time, it sticks for longer, and after the 3rd time, we forget it much more slowly. So going back to key information and topics at least 3 times is incredibly powerful. So how can you make it stick? What is effective revision? It's these 4 strategies: identifying and breaking down most relevant knowledge, retrieving this knowledge through self and paired testing, retrieval practice, applying knowledge by planning and practicing exam questions, and using spaced practice over time so that you are not cramming at the last minute. Good luck in your revision. You can do it.